It must be a terrible thing to fight all those desires all the time. I tell you, I'll be honest with you, I can't fight them. I'd give in to them. If they were in my heart, I'd give in to them. I know I would. But you see what Jesus did for me? He just took them all out. I don't want to. I don't want to go. I went to a black church preaching some few years ago, and it was about the same time that some black rap group came out with a rap song that said, "I'm as bad as I want to be." And I heard about it. And I got up and I told them black folks, I'm as bad as I want to be. And let me tell you about shouting me down. But they did it. I told them I drank all I wanted to, smoked all I wanted, just did everything I wanted to do. But thank God I don't want to do it because I know serving God is worth everything. It's worth it all. If it cost me my life, it's still worth everything. I wish I could convince you how wonderful that it is. But don't seem like I can convince anybody of anything. I've told you before, Daddy's sitting back there. We was at our dining room table one day, and my uncle, his name was W.F. Poole, we called him Dud. Uncle Dud. And Uncle Dud was sitting across from Daddy, and Daddy was eating pickled beets straight from the jar. He just loved them. I mean, he was making them things look good. And my uncle said, "Give me one of them." And he got it in his mouth, and he started spitting. He said, "Those things are as bad as they always been. You just made it look so good." I wish I could make salvation look so good as it is. It's such a wonderful treasure. It's such a pearl of great price. It's so wonderful that I can't tell you because my eye haven't seen and my ear hasn't heard and it hasn't entered in my heart how wonderful this thing is. I can only tell you a little bit how great God is. I went to school a lot, but I never did get educated. If I was as smart as Brother Ryan and could use some of those words, I might could describe it a little more. Brother Addis got so many stories to tell. He can describe something with a story. Most of the time, unless it's a little short, funny something, I can't even remember the punchline. I can't hardly tell a story. I started to tell a Baptist preacher one the other day. I met him in Statesboro, and it was about the mirror, Ronnie. And I had it all backwards. Pat had to straighten me out. So I can't hardly tell anything. I wish I could, but all I can tell you is joy unspeakable and full of glory, and it's better felt than it is told. And I can't tell you, but I can tell you this: if you ever feel it, you'll know what I'm talking about. I don't tell people they're saved. Let them pray as long as they want to. I don't tell them they're saved. I don't tell them they're sanctified. I don't tell them that they got the Holy Ghost. If they don't know it, they didn't get it. Because when the Comforter has come, when salvation has come, when you've changed from night unto day, you know it. And it will be better than anything that you've ever experienced in your life. I can say that it's worth it. Oh, how about you, old widow woman? The old preacher. You know how selfish preachers are. Come up knocking on her door and said, "Make me a cake." She said, "I ain't got but just a little bit of meal. And, I'm going to make it for my son, and we're going to eat it, and then I guess we're going to die. We ain't got anything else." He said, "Make me one first." She said, "Okay, I'll make you one first." And she made him a cake, and he ate it. And probably the little boy was saying, "What are we going to eat?" It's kind of like y'all were years ago when the preacher used to come to the house and they threw you outside, the youngins. See, youngin gets to eat first now. But back then they threw them outside and they'd peep through the window and wondering if that preacher was going to eat all the chicken or not. Was there going to be anything left? And I can imagine that little boy saying, there ain't going to be nothing left. He's going to eat every crumb. We ain't got nothing. But let me tell you, it wasn't long. She said, I got a problem. And he said, the Lord's got an answer. Is it worth obeying God? Is it worth doing what the Lord said? If it takes your last dollar, if it takes your last bit of food, is it worth doing what God said? Yes. Well, she went and he said, get those vessels, borrow not a few. He filled every one of them. I heard a black preacher preaching and said this lady became the standard oil dealer in her neighborhood. She got so much oil. The Lord had blessed her until she paid off all of her debts and had enough to live off of. Go ask the widow woman, is it worth it? Is it worth what you did for the man of God? Is it worth it? Oh, many times over. I can't tell you how much worth it is. What about it, David? Anointed king and had to run for your life. Hid in caves. Just didn't have things to eat at times. In danger of your life. Is it worth it? And he said, well, looking back over my life, he said, I've been young. Now I'm old. And I have never yet I have never seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread. It's worth it, folks. It's worth it. We may go through tests and trials. We may hide in caves for our lives. But in the end, looking back over our lives, it's worth it. It's worth it. You see, I've been closer to death than most of you have. I didn't know it. I didn't know it. I didn't feel sick. I had a little something on my ankle a few years ago, and it swelled up and it looked bad, but, you know, it didn't hurt very much, and I thought it'd go away, Brother Gliss. Finally, Pat made me go to the doctor. I went to the doctor. The doctor took one look at it, admitted me, and told Pat if I'd waited 18 more hours, I'd have been dead. 18 more hours. I thought, thank God I got through July. See, July is my birthday. And that ought to be a happy time. Well, in July I found out I was a diabetic back in 1963. It was in July of 77 when I found out I had tuberculosis. It was in July of 92 when I had a stroke, and it was in July of last year when my kidneys failed. So I'm thankful I got through July. I'm glad for August. But I tell you, with all of that, I'm still able to be here. I'm still here, and I still love the Lord, and I have yet been forsaken because of good people like you. I appreciate so much of the offering, but it kind of makes me feel bad. Brother Gary came, and he preached so wonderful, and you got up some more money. I don't know how much you got for him, but the first time around, it was $62, and I come, and you give me over $200. I can't help but appreciate that. I love you for it. The Lord has taken care of me. There's some folks right here in this church I've shaken hands with as I walked out and put money, I mean what I call big money, into my hands. And I appreciate it. He's not here tonight. I was looking around. I was doing some visiting for Brother Butler. Of course, by telling you this, you'll probably know who it is. And I was walking through this project, going to this lady's house, and a horn kept blowing. I said, who is that? I don't see too good, you know. And they went by, and I just waved because I didn't know who it was. And they went by, and I went on down, and they come up and pull up there where I was walking. I said, now, who is that? And a brother got out, and he said, would you be offended if I gave you $20 to go to Williams's and get something to eat? I said, I don't know, but I probably could get over it. So he gave me some money to go to Williams's, and I went right by myself. And I enjoyed it. But the Lord has just been good to me. Is it worth my trip? I wouldn't take nothing for my journey now. I wouldn't take nothing for my journey now. Abraham, what about it? You left family. You went to a place that you didn't even know where you were going. Was it worth it? Hebrews said, in my words, he said, I caught a glimpse of a city who had foundations, whose builder and maker is God. Yes, it's worth it. It's worth it. Because you see, I caught that vision. And once you catch that vision, nothing else matters. The things that seem to be so important, as I was going to say, when you're younger, you think amusements, you've got to go to them. You think you've got to do this. You think you can't go to church. You get tired of church. You think all that's important. But when you've been as close to death and have as much sickness as I've had, you'll realize that's a lie. None of it matters. None of it matters. When you're Brother Polk and you're laying on your back in the hospital and the doctor says, maybe open heart surgery, you know what matters? Is your relationship with God. Because you may not come out of it. I pray that he does, because we need him. But at 80 years old, God's blessed him abundantly. But Brother Polk, if he was here tonight, he'd tell you, it's worth it. It's worth it. Sister Gunner, she's not here. She is. I knew she was right there in the middle, but I couldn't see her. 90, going on 91, I guess, now. Has it been worth it? It's been worth it. You see, me and Wayne used to be real close when I was growing up, and I'd go spend the night at her house. You might hear her up at 4, 5 o'clock in the morning praying. Nobody to commend her for it. That's just what she did. She come to church. She's come to prayer meeting. She's come to missionary meeting when she could. And she comes to church, even though it's a little harder to get here than what it used to be. But she comes every chance she gets. Is it worth it? Feeble, walking in sometimes with a cane, with a walker, whatever. Yes, because every now and then the Spirit of God will come by and make everything worth it. Will pay up the debt that the devil loads on you. I don't know how many times I've been able to come to church and feel better after I got to church than I did at home. The Lord just come by and strengthened me and took away this old cramp. And I ain't hurting anymore right at the moment. And I thank the Lord for it. We look at Moses and say, Moses, is it worth it? Moses will say, well, let me tell you what I did. I looked over all the riches of Egypt. And I saw all that I could have. And I said, I'd rather suffer the afflictions of the righteous than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season. And I believe when he got up there on that mountain and God let him view that promised land, he said, it's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it. And folks, I'm telling you tonight, it's worth it. Don't give up. Don't quit. It is worth it. You kind of get what you pay for. I think Ronnie said one time about staying. My son called it when he was little. The first time we ever saw one, he called it the Econo Lodge. Everybody stayed at the Econo Lodge. That's the